Today at World Talks, we'll be joined by Professor William Hale from University of London. We'll be discussing the implications of the US pullout from Syria and the influence of Christian evangelists in US policymaking. We have Moscow, Tehran and Damascus, who are uncomfortable with the US presence in northeast Syria. And at the same time, we seem to have this American indecisiveness, whether the US should stay or not. Given this scenario, what are the chances of a US withdrawal in the near future?
I think there is always a risk of that. You see, I think most people in the United States, I can't speak with certainty on this point, but my impression is that most people in the United States are simply fed up with the Middle East. The United States got itself into a terrible mess in Iraq. Most people feel that it was a terrible mistake going into Iraq. There are some exceptions to that, but most of them feel that. And therefore, they simply don't want to go on getting involved in further struggles in the Middle East and don't see why they should risk American lives and spending American money on this project. So I think there is exactly such a risk. But as I said...
Now, generally when people talk about the Middle East, they often talk about it from an economic perspective, from a geostrategic perspective and so forth. But what about the role theology plays in there, particularly when you look at the Christian evangelists? And the position they're sort of advocating. Do you think that could be significantly influencing the policy decisions from Washington?
It could be, I don't know. I think President Trump's main focus at the moment is in trying to preserve his majority in the US Congress. And if fundamentalist Christians in the United States are interested in supporting a very hard line on the Israeli question, then that's what they're going to do, and he's going to stick by that.
Now, some of the non-state actors, especially when you look at organizations like Al-Qaeda, they believe that they've been pulling the US in some guerrilla warfare, war of attrition. And that has been affecting the US economy. Do you feel that is a significant factor if the US was to commit troops to Syria, whether it be troops on the ground or perhaps other sorts of military engagement? Could that significantly affect the US economy at this point in time?
I don't know. I suspect not. I mean, after all, the United States was involved in a perfectly appalling and destructive struggle in Vietnam for many, many years during my youth. I will record it. And yet the US economy carried on under Johnson and Nixon pretty much the same way. It's an enormous country. It can handle these things. I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue for American voters is that they simply don't want to risk American lives and having to spend US taxpayers' money on a project in which they feel the US should pull out.